come on, I said good morning and everybody raised the roof. Everybody enjoying your lunch? Yeah. Awesome. So, chewing. So before I introduce the next session, I wanted to show you a little video of an interview that happened just this morning.
Alzheimer's Foundation of America is hosting a free educational conference right here in New Orleans. With more than 88,000 Louisiana residents living with the disease, they will be getting some good information for families who are impacted by this and tools to help them provide better care. We actually have a local caregiver in the studio with us this morning, Emily German. Her mother has young onset Alzheimer's disease. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And for sharing your story so that people understand what it's like if you're impacted by this, or maybe to see the signs and symptoms in their relatives. You're only 24 years old and you're taking care of your mom. Tell us how you first started noticing signs and symptoms in her.
Sure, yeah. So a lot of obviously confusion, which everybody knows is a lot of upset or anger in certain situations that she'd normally, find these normal situations. There was a lot of confusion with time, whether that be time of day, months, seasons, confusion with managing money, and managing those smaller details that as adults we no longer really think about, but then as the disease progresses it becomes tough for sure.
And how old was your mom?
She was 61 when we first started noticing symptoms.
And at what point did you realize, okay, mom's not just going through a phase where she's confused or angry, this is actually something going on?
Yeah, so my family's actually had experience with the disease before. My father's dad actually passed away from Alzheimer's when I was young. And so it was something that we found a little bit familiar to us. And, once she started displaying some of these symptoms in a grocery store with her and she was getting upset about, payment or something like that, it was that tick of, all right, maybe we should get this tested.
Sure, and great for you for stepping up to take care of your mom, but I'm sure that can be very difficult on you as well.
Yeah, but, you take every day as it comes and you face what is put in front of you, and that's just kind of the way life goes.
Yeah, and I'm sure through the process you've learned more about this that can help other people. What do you feel? Was there something that was very shocking or something you realized about this that you thought, I wouldn't have known this, I wouldn't have gone through it?
Yeah, what was the most interesting fact for me, and probably a lot of people, is that only 10%, less than 10% of Alzheimer's cases are from genes or are genetic. And so there's a lot that you can do to prevent the disease, and it's the same as just taking care of yourself. A lot of what you would think of as heart problems can also lead to brain problems. So exercise and eating right and taking care of yourself really does help your long-term health. And that's some of what we'll talk about at the conference today. I'm actually speaking at 11:45 as well at the conference. And so if you do want to come and you haven't signed up yet, you can sign in at the door. They're accepting walk-ins. And so just learn a little bit about preventative measures, about brain health, about how to take care of yourself as well.
Yeah, very important information. Thank you so much again for sharing your story. We wish you and your mom the best. The Alzheimer's Foundation of America, guys, is hosting this educational conference at 9 o'clock this morning at the Lowe's Hotel. You can register at the door, as Emily just told us. For more information, you can log on to www.tv.com and click on link.
So how many people actually saw Emily this morning and are here because of it? Nice. Without further ado, please welcome Emily German. So, the photo that you see on the screen, Emily, tell us what that's about, where that's from.
Sure, so that was actually
Anybody? Oh, there it is. So it's actually from this weekend. So we did a cardio for a cause in conjunction with Soul Cycle. So we had about 50 people cycling with us. My mom was there. She's somewhere in the middle of that photo. And the whole idea is that cardio helps your brain, moving that blood around your brain. And we raised $20,476 for the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. My mom had this disease for the past 5 years, 6 years, we've noticed. And we've never asked a thing from any of our family members, friends, anything like that, and finally decided to reach out and see if anyone really did want to help out or was interested in learning more or anything like that. And we got a huge response. It was up in New York, or in Long Island, so it's a little bit hard to get to. So we had a lot more people just like donating and trying to be a part of it and supporting even more than we're in the ride. So super grateful coming into this week with a huge smile on my face from this event. My mom was ecstatic all weekend.
So tell us about your mom.
So my mom, Linda Larson German, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's when she was 61. She's about to turn, or we noticed the symptoms when she was 61, diagnosed like 62, 63. And she's about to turn 67 on Saturday. She, before this, was incredibly successful in the fashion industry, just a powerhouse of a woman, someone that I still look up to, and take everything from, even though she's not there to, or she's not mentally there to give me advice. Everything I do is really coming from her history and what she's done and what she's accomplished. Growing Liz Claiborne, when it was a startup, if any of you guys know that brand, becoming the president of that, was there for 20 years, and then moving on to a bunch of other executive roles in the fashion industry, obviously high-stress jobs, and so cannot emphasize enough that if you're in stressful situations, especially as caretakers, taking care of yourself, mental health, and lessening the stresses in your life is incredibly important.
So tell us the first signs that you, and tell us family dynamics, first of all.
So family dynamics. So I am my mother's only child. She had me when she was 42. My parents were married when they were 40. So they were a little bit older, which is why I'm 24 and a caretaker, which is fine. And my dad had a previous marriage, so I have one half sister. And then I have, what other family dynamic is there?
Talk
So
about Dad.
that's good.
Talk about Dad a little bit. What
Dad is just the sweetest man you'll ever meet in your life. He is now primary caretaker, has taken that on fully. His dad had Alzheimer's in his late 90s, so it's a very different case than his wife in her 60s. However, he had experience with the disease before and really knew what it was once we started seeing symptoms. And then the other question you asked was, what were those first signs and symptoms? So the reason why I'm actually here is because I went to Tulane. That's why I'm in New Orleans. So, so maybe some other people went to Tulane. And so when I first got to Tulane at 18, I had healthy parents. Was just like a regular teenager heading off to college, super excited to get away from home, all that jazz. And then by the time of my first kind of trip home, on I think it was Thanksgiving or winter break, I remember my mom losing, like she couldn't find the car in the parking lot. She'd come to pick me up at Newark, which if you've been there, she really loves me if she actually drove all the way there to pick me up. And I'm lugging this huge suitcase around because I was switching out all my winter clothes and to bring them back down here. And we're like looking over this parking garage for like 30 minutes and I'm getting so really angry. And just saying awful things to her. And it just like scars my mind of the different fights that we had at that time when none of us knew what was going on. And it was just like, what's wrong with you? What's happening? And there's part of that that's just like, normal aging, normal forgetting. Nothing that I should say hopefully should scare anybody. But there's a lot of it that I have a lot of regrets about, the lack of patience that I had at that time, just not knowing and definitely bring that patience and kindness and remembering all of that into my day-to-day now.
And so how's mom now? What's mom up to?
Mom is out in Long Island. We are doing everything we can to keep her at home with her dog for as long as we can, just keep her as happy as possible. What was crazy was just how sweet and giving my mom is. One of our family friends was going through a hard time a few years ago, and my mom took her in and was like, come live with us, don't worry about anything, we'll take care of you. Turns out by the time she was ready to leave, my mom needed help. So she's still helping us out and living in our home. And she actually just had a baby, and so, new life and that new energy around my mom has just been the biggest blessing.
And you have an in-home aide?
We now have 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. And they'll kind of take her to the dog park, drive her around. The car was taken away about 2 years ago now. And take her grocery shopping, making sure that there's groceries in the house, trying to make her day as normal as possible, and just like, hey mom, a friend's coming over, how do you like this person? And that's been more of a recent thing that's happened, that we do have, official in-home care.
And it sounds like, so when I first talked to your dad and we talked about the Soul Cycle event, I remember he specifically said, and Linda's gonna ride too. And I looked at our president and CEO and I was like, what did he just say? And she did.
Yeah, she did. She's she's right in the middle there.
And the one thing that struck the both of us, a couple of things that struck us, was the vibrancy, where our whole thing, what the AFA always wants to tell people is that, you have to have hope. This is an awful disease, and for some people it lasts 5, 10, 20 years, but you have to maintain some quality of life. And I think the one thing with your mom that I kept saying was, look at her eyes, look at the vibrancy in it, and that's a true testament to what you and your dad do, and how your family gathers around her and makes her feel like she's still Linda from Liz Claiborne.
Yeah, that's what, actually Josie and I's first conversation, I was talking about people with Alzheimer's, and I said the word patient. And she interrupted me and she said, we don't say patient. And I said,
Say
why?
that tone.
And I said, why? And she said, imagine if I called your mom patient, would she be okay with hearing the word patient? And I can just imagine that, oh my goodness, if I ever called her patient to her face. And it's also, it's that mindset of, she's incredibly positive, and she knows that she has the disease, and she recognizes what that means, but she doesn't really think that we notice it very often. She tries to hide it, and this has been 6 years into it. It's not very hideable. And kind of treating her like that, and still sitting down and having a conversation and talking about the same thing over and over again, and having that patience and kindness to do that. We've been incredibly blessed that a lot of her friends and a lot of her family have actually stepped up. And I know that every situation's different, and every person's different. And my dad was actually tearing up speaking to me about this weekend, that, what happened with his father is that everyone kind of walked away after diagnosis, and they had a lot of trouble finding friends and family to care for him. Whereas with my mom, we've been incredibly blessed with the outreach and support, and her friends from kindergarten reaching out and, can we come visit? How's she doing? Emailing me constantly, asking for updates, what they can do to help, anything like that. And I very much attribute that to her outlook today, and still really wanting to be a part of everything, and being okay with this whole party of people then going to her house after this, and just being excited that she was hosting a party and got to dance and all of that. And so making those little fun things is hard of work as that is for all the different caretakers, is really worth it. And whether she recognizes it or not at the end of the day, I full-heartedly believe that it's slowed the disease. It's made the entire process better for all of us.
And what effect does that have on you in terms of you're 24 years old, 24 going on 40 in terms of your mindset, but how does that affect you in terms of your future?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what I've learned. I've changed dramatically over the past 5 years. A lot of what I've learned over this time period, I've taken with me into all aspects of life. All of my friendships have changed a lot. I definitely, did a major switch of, is this person important in my life? Are they adding value into my life? Or are they adding more stress into my life? Because there's a part of it that you kind of need to be selfish with that. If you're having a ton of extra stress in your life that has nothing to do, with this loved one that's going through a hard time, then you're not really going to be able to give your full energy into that or into anything. And so I was actually, when I graduated college, I immediately knew, all right, I have to move back to New York. I have to help out my mom, and I have to, be there for her. So I found some job in New York and was just kind of like going through the day, not even paying attention to what was going on. I hated my job. I hated, that bustling New York lifestyle that I grew up in, but just wasn't equipped to handle once I had all these other stressors going on. And I was half-assed caretaker. I don't know if I can say that on the mic.
Too late now, right?
It's out there now.
It's like I've been on live TV 2 days this week, and now this. Gotta really watch. And I'm famous now, but it's whatever. What was I saying? I was talking about how, I was not performing at my full capacity as a caretaker, not performing at my full capacity at work, with friends, in relationships, everything. And so to realize that and think, what do I need to do? And New Orleans has always been my safe place. 2 of my friends that are sitting in the audience, we were in a layover coming back from New York this weekend, and they looked at each other and started laughing, and they were like, "You're back." It's like, "What do you mean I'm back?" And they're like, "Your shoulders came down, you look more relaxed." Because it's high stress. It's, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of guilt, and whether I was living at home, living close by, living all the way in New Orleans, I've never felt like I'm doing enough, and I've just realized that I'm just going to have to live with that. There's always going to be that guilt of I could always be doing more. But then there's also that recognition of, this is where I'm happiest. This is where I can then come into these situations. I go out back and visit about once a month, once every 2 months, depending on funds. And that I can go back and be just fully in it and appreciative of being with her, being appreciative of where she is at that moment, because I know that the next time I see her, the next month, it will be worse. And so just being appreciative of how much she can do and that conversation that we're having in that moment. And then just moving on from there and just doing what I can.
Let's talk about your dad a little bit. How's he coping with everything? Without revealing family, because we're live.
Because he's probably watching. My dad's great. He's doing real well.
Love you,
Josie
Dad.
put me on the spot here. No, he's handling it incredibly well. I always say that the one person I'm really worried about in this situation is him, because he's losing the love of his life, and he's just watching her, deteriorate in front of his eyes, which is heartbreaking for all of us, and I think really for him mostly. With that said, I think that he could definitely be doing more. In order to, the camera here for the Facebook is, I think he could definitely be doing more. And in that it's just going to get a massage. I don't know what it is. What do you like to do? He does like to go to SoulCycle, which is part of it. That used to be like a family kind of thing. And so he still does those little steps. He still works in New York City, and so he's in the city a few days a week, which I think that little bits of separation is honestly really great for him. Being able to focus, as I'm doing as well, in two different locations for some reason is just like being able to kind of box everything. But kind of addressing those emotions and working a little bit more on yourself as a caretaker is incredibly important.
So we want to do a quick pause, and Emily posted, calling you Emily is so odd. Emmy posted something on one of her socials that I saw, and it was the video that we're going to show you now. It's a short clip of her mom. And what struck me about this was because I called her and I said, or I texted her and I said, when was this video from? And she was like, this weekend. And you'll get what I'm talking about in terms of the vibrancy. So let's see a little bit of Linda.
Okay. It's him.
I was gonna say, so far it looks like me.
I guess I like you because it all turned
No
out
hair.
just like him.
So the people in my office think I'm weird because I've played this like 500 times, and I'm like, this is what we talk about. We talk about the vibrancy, the life, it's not just about being alive, it's about living, essentially. And when Emmy and her dad came to us and said, we want to do this, we embraced it 100% because it's all about what they're doing is what we tell people to do all the time, which is, you know, Emmy's 24 years old. I've known Emmy for a whopping month? 2 months? 2 months.
We're close though.
We're,
We got dinner last night. It's not big deal.
I want to also say that when we first started talking, Emmy told me about how nervous she is about public speaking and all of this. Now she's done 2 TV appearances and she's on Facebook Live. Huh.
You did not tell me to be by myself. Just putting that out.
So this is, I mean, she is 24 years old. And by the way, I've mentioned my 4 sisters. I've given one of them up and I'm adopting Emmy. Just don't tell my other 4 sisters. I was in the market for a 24-year-old sister, so now I've got one. But it's hard. I mean, the AFA has a division called the Young Leadership Division where we are in schools, on campuses, in high schools, talking to teenagers and to 20-somethings because they are now caregivers. And how do you deal with that? You know, when you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s and you're caring for somebody, it's one level. But when you're in your late teens or early 20s and you've suddenly become caregiver to mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whomever it is, it's a whole other world. So we commend you. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. We commend you for all you're doing. So if you never see me again, it's because Emily beat me up after this. Tell us what's next for you guys.
What's next for us?
Yeah.
Well, Josie and I are already trying to solve the world's problems. We're going to find a cure. No. So I've been doing a lot of outreach on social media, just in my personal life, everything on raising awareness, and I spoke to it for 2 seconds this morning, but raising awareness on the fact that there's part of this that you can prevent just by treating yourself right now. And, you know, there's no definite answers into what's the cause, what's the cure, any of that. But there's a bunch of correlations. And if you've seen anyone with the disease after they exercise, or after, or even just comparing like a really, healthy meal versus a really heavy meal with a bunch of alcohol and just watching them the next day, any of us, I feel the same way. It's like you're foggy or all of these things. And so, that's why we did this ride after cardio. My mom is like she's incredible this weekend. Her brain is firing, and she's having conversations. She's remembering all of these friends that came to support that have known her for years. I'm like terrified because they're all emailing me in advance. Like, do you think she's gonna remember me? And I'm like, why are you asking me this? I don't know. We'll figure it out then. And she did. She remembered who they were, and people kept coming up to I would walk up with her and be like, this is you worked with them at this company and they came here to support all the way from this. And she's like, oh, I know, stuff. And starts getting into conversations with them, and it was like a whole nother human. And I think that exercise attributes a lot to that. Also, just positivity, having those people around and constantly talking to her, no matter how frustrating for you it might be to talk about the same thing over and over, it exercises their brain. Doing like little puzzles if they can still do it, or drawing or stuff like that. Just to keep it moving, keep them moving, keep them positive, and their quality of life as best as it can be.
And we talked about getting mom into some therapeutic programs that we're going to talk about in the next session.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that the AFA does is a program called the Teal Room, which is our version of memory cafes. So instead of just going into a room and sitting and having tea or having something to munch on, it's a 2-hour activity, and it ranges from horticultural therapy, where they literally truly do get their hands dirty and work on some gardening, or dancing. We have an organization that we work with a lot that comes in and dances with the people that attend our Teal Room. And what we find is the difference between them walking in, which is that dread of, what am I doing? Why am I here? Why did you bring me here? And then the resistance for them not wanting to leave at the end. And for us, it's like, score. Is Jackie in the room? Jackie, are you here? So you'll hear in a little bit from Jackie from Sing for Your Seniors, because they are an intricate part of our Teal Room activities back in New York, and soon to be across the country as well. But I think we can all attest to the fact that keeping active, even if it's drawing or just doing a puzzle, not the one I gave you this morning, but one that you can actually complete, doing some sort of activity. We always talk about ballroom dancing. And that's something that we can, that you can get your loved one involved with as well. Again, it's finding out who your resources are here in New Orleans and signing your loved one up. Our Teal Room activities are free, so.
I have a question.
No.
I can't turn this around on you.
Okay.
Are people that don't have the disease allowed to go to the Teal Rooms?
Absolutely, yeah. And what we've seen is that it becomes a great place to hang for the caregiver as well, because your loved one, sometimes they get involved in the activity. So if it's something like Jackie's group where they are Broadway singers and they're amazing, you'll find that both the caregiver and the person with the disease are actively involved. But sometimes the caregivers just like to come and hang and sit back and get their respite while their loved one has a therapeutic activity. So.
Because I was just thinking that in terms of preventative measures, especially because I'm talking a lot about how important having other people are around you. If you live by yourself or anything like that, or if anyone you know does, and they just need more,
Right.
Activities and stuff like that. There's so many free, wonderful resources that the AFA provides, whether that's post-diagnosis or just preventative measures.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for Emily? Emily?
I just want to say you're doing a great job.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I just want to say you're doing a great job. I'm very proud of you, and I know your mom is too.
Thank you so much.
I would love to go back to something that you talked about that I think is so crucial in terms of people asking for help and being able to accept the help. I think that is one of the most difficult things, and that's what isolates a lot of families, is people care about the individual, but they're uncomfortable and they don't know how to help. And I'd love, based on your experience, any insight in not only how people can offer help to people that they care about, but how you, as the caretaker, can accept that help, because it's very hard also to accept help, I think.
Yeah, so whenever people reach out, I always tell them, go out and spend a weekend at our house or a couple of days, spend one-on-one time with her. Because during like a 10-minute phone conversation, at least for the first few years, you wouldn't even notice that she had the disease. And then as it progressed more, having that one-on-one time with her, besides being at a party or something like that where she's overwhelmed, even when it's a conversation with two people and her, because then if it's two really fast talking individuals, she gets lost and frustrated because she can't keep up with the conversation. So those one-on-one conversations and just spending that quality time in person is what I've always said. And it's like everyone who reaches out to me and said, we want to do anything we can, I'm like, all right, well, put your actions where your mouth is and come out and spend 3 days and see how you feel. And really put in that quality time with those that you care about and encouraging people to do that. And I feel like, especially for my dad, who's really bad at accepting help, then being able to offer like a fun few days at his home and feeding them and all of these things is kind of a nice back and forth.
I just want to say, Emily, that you are doing a great job, and God bless you and your family, because I feel like He's using you all for some reason to help so many people, So just know that what you all are going through is not just for you and your family, it's for others. And it's so good to be here today. It's so good to hear you. It's so good. Continue to let God use you.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for making us cry. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for... Gosh. Someone said to me this weekend, and she said, whatever you believe in, it's fine, but I believe in God, and God gives you what you can handle, and you can handle this. And I was like, and it's similar but different to what you said, and I think that it's just more to what we can all relate to. If all of us in this room have some connection to the disease, we're given what we can handle, and I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. I don't know what reason is out there, but yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Hi, Emmy. I think maybe this might be for Josie as well, but I want to brainstorm a little bit for the situation that you were talking about, where all of these people say they want to help. Our situation is a little bit more advanced. I think a lot of people would agree that when you have a family member with Alzheimer's, people drop off, and it's lonely. And it is hard to convert the what can I do to coming over with a casserole, or something like that. And if there was an app or some kind of calendar function where all those people would get an email to say do it now instead of having your dad have to ask for those things, I think that might be a good way to connect well-wishers or potential do-gooders with a mandate that they actually have to do something, a reminder, instead of just letting it fall to the floor. So maybe that's something AFA can work on.
It's an awesome idea, but the word mandate will, even with siblings, things happen. I don't remember if it was you, Taylor, or Janine said, life happens. When my second oldest sister got a job and moved to London, what do? And you just have to sort of adapt. I love the fact that if people want to help, they should just, in my opinion, they should just help. Come on, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to spend money. come and sit and talk to, I'm ferreting out your mom now, like, come and sit and talk to Linda for an hour, or just spend time. And I think sometimes that's what gets lost in the translation of it. When I first met Ernie's dad, when he told us all about Linda, and he told us all about this event that they wanted to do, and both myself and our CEO said to him, what are you doing for you? You know, how are you taking? And he was like, no, that's what, let's focus. And we were like, no. And part of it is, you know, you want people, your family, your friends, to not only help take care of your loved one, but also every once in a while, an atta-girl, a pat on the back, hey, let's go get our nails done, or, you know what, you go get your nails done and I'll take care of your mom, something. And that circle, I mean, that photo just blew us away when we saw it on Sunday, because it's like, that's what caring is all about. So.
Can I, hold on. So, to that effect, what we actually wound up doing right when we took away her keys about 2 years ago, the main concern is how we need to still let her get around. And so Google Docs, you can download a calendar function and then share it with a gajillion individuals. And so I called anyone I could think of that could help out. And I was like, I'm about to send you a link, pick a few dates. You know, you get your choice of dates, but you're coming. And that is what organized everyone. Everyone could see who else is helping and how much and when, and split the time within them. With them. So yeah, Google Docs is what we did.
Amy, I want to thank you so much for this, and especially for calling New Orleans your safe place, because we're not getting that much right now.
That's a good point.
And I want to compliment all your folks that are supporting you back here,
Yes.
and your work and your friends. Guys, this is a very hard subject, and the people do stop coming to visit. My mother was a very social person, and you just have to tell them it's okay to come. That's all. You got to communicate, and that app idea would be incredible. Google Docs, just communicate. It's okay to come, because they're going to be affected in their families in some way, you know, and they're going to need to know, hey, just come. Yeah. And so that is so important. I had a question, because I know the answer, but I want you to tell folks, because I did ask you, like I ask everybody, did your mom have long-term care insurance?
She does have long-term care insurance, and it was such a blessing. That is the care that we just put in place in the past few weeks. And when my parents signed up for it, now I'm going to sell for him. When my parents signed up for it, they were younger, they didn't really understand, but an older family friend was like, no, you gotta do this, and this is a really great insurance plan, and this is why. And they're like, all right, well, hopefully we never have to use it, but, you know, I guess. And now we are just so grateful that after these 3 months of testing out different people and just a few hours a day, it will be paid for to have someone help out my mom. And we'll try and, through that, keep her in the home as long as possible. So really lucky for that.
Because by the way, while here in New Orleans, it's whatever Taylor said, it's $5,000 a month for to be in a nursing home. In New York, it averages anywhere between 8 and 12 a month. And I don't know anybody who can take that hit every single month with no coverage.
Yeah, and with this particular care, it's just a check in the mail, spend it however you need.
Yeah.
So long-term care, definitely support that.
So when I raised my hand with a question, some of it, though, has been addressed, but I'm a dementia trainer and consultant, and that is a very big question, because the family feels like it's not worth getting the help, because by the time I make 15 phone calls and do this and do that, it's so introducing the shared calendar on Google Docs, and there are many other ones, I'm sure, but this one works great because everyone who's coming, whatever time they're coming, it's all on there. Then there's a backup plan. They can put the list of people who can come as a sub if something happens. And then the family puts an example schedule of what a typical day is like. That way, when I walk in your home and I want to help, the dad, the family member, doesn't have to stop and explain to me, this is typically what we do. These are the things that we don't do because they're not good for her. She can't process that. So you have an example of one day, what one day is typically like, some of the big key things not to do that seem like they would not be harmful, but key things not to do. And then this particular family started a journal. So each person wanted to write what their experience was like that day with her and what kind of things they did. And they brought this puzzle, but it didn't work great, but they ended up doing this and it did work great. The journal has just become something the family loves, and people who don't live here but are family members or friends now can read it. You just share Google Docs and Google Calendar, and it's worked out great for them. So I'm not a tech person, you are, but that was very easy to set up, and now I just tell other families, and it has been working beautifully.
Any other questions for Emily? Em, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do another round of applause. Okay, so our last session of the day, I'd like to bring up Christy Melian and Jackie Vanderbeck, please. Oh, where are they? Let's give them a round of applause. So we've talked a lot about creative therapies and what to do and how to keep your loved one active, and yourself as a caregiver, keep your loved one active. Sorry, technical issues. Okay. All right, so Christy Melian is the Program and Respite Administrator for Alzheimer's Services of the Capital Area, Charlie's Place. Christy's organization has been a member org of the AFA for a decade, probably?
At least.
Yes. So almost since our inception, basically. And today, full disclosure, was the first time Christy and I actually got to meet in person because we've talked for that whole decade. Newer to our membership network is Jackie and Sing for Your Seniors. So I'm going to turn it over to Christy to kick it off.
Good afternoon. My name is Christy, like Josie said, and I'm with Alzheimer's Services of the Capital Area. And my organization has been in the greater Baton Rouge community for over 35 years, providing education and support services to caregivers, individuals affected by dementia, and healthcare professionals working with individuals with dementia. And we are so honored to be participating in the AFA conference today in my hometown. I'm also a Tulane graduate, so yay, Green Wave. But AFA has been such a huge supporter of my organization and really helping us further our mission. We have their educational materials in our resource library. They've given us materials and guidance for our memory screening events. All of the staff members, it's a requirement that we complete their AFA dementia care training. And they've been a huge supporter of our adult day programs, Charlie's Place, Baton Rouge, and Gonzales. And so thank you so much for all that you do for organizations like ours and for the community.
Thank you.
But I'm going to get started with my presentation because I could talk, y'all. So I know y'all are ready to go, okay? And so I'm here to share with you some ideas about creative therapies for individuals with dementia. And I thought, the best thing for me to do is really share what we do at my organization's Adult Day Center, Charlie's Place. And so I pulled some activities that I think will be beneficial to you if you're a family caregiver or even a healthcare professional. And quite a few of these activities you can use at various stages of the disease, whether it's middle, mild stage, or the moderate stage, or even a severe stage. Now, you know, even though we have loved ones that are affected by the disease, they can still have a great quality of life. And their lives can still have meaning, and it can still have purpose. And so what we try to accomplish at Charlie's Place are those things, giving them meaning, giving them purpose, helping them be engaged with each other and in activities. And so why are creative therapies important? Well, they help promote mental stimulation. And that's so important for our loved ones or our clients that are affected by the disease. They can help promote physical activity. And even though it may have to be modified, you know, that's still important, right, for them. And it can promote socialization. And that's key. It's one of the key things that we want to, that my organization we share with caregivers is that we want them to be social. We want them to continue to be engaged and have meaning, right? And and I hope I don't tell too many stories, but my coworkers know I do tell a lot of stories. But I've been working in social services for a long time, so I have a lot of great stories. But I was working with a caregiver, and we were really close. I've been working with her for a couple of years. She's a caregiver for a husband that had Alzheimer's. And, you know, she would come in my office and we'd just talk, and I'd let her vent. And so one day she came in and she told me, she said, I am sick of him. He's always following me. And so he was at that stage where he was following her everywhere, right? And so, you know, because we had a close relationship, I could tell her, you know what, he's probably sick of you too. You know? Please get on my nerves. Well, you get on his nerves too. Her husband, before the disease, he was working full time. He was very involved with his church. They traveled a lot internationally and nationally. And so now he's not doing any of that. So yeah, he's going to follow you around. He doesn't have anything to do. He's bored. And so we were able to talk her into trying out an adult day program. And you know what? He enjoyed it. He liked being around the other guys. He really enjoyed the music therapy, which I know Jackie's going to talk more about. And he loved to sing. And so they need that. That's meaning for him. You know, that's giving him a purpose, you know, giving him something fun to do during the day. And so those creative therapies can also improve sleep habits too. And again, I got another story, but I had a caregiver whose husband was attending Charlie's Place. And, you know, she would tell us, she said, you know, I don't know what y'all are doing there, but he has to take a nap every time he comes home from Charlie's Place. But we keep him active, and that's important, right? And so it also improves self-esteem, and we want that. You know, all that changes during the course of the disease for them. And what I like to remind caregivers is that they don't always convey that to you, but you know, they get depressed. They realize things are changing and they can't control that. And so sometimes they'll self-isolate, you know, and so that self-esteem decreases. And so, you know, as caregivers, whether you're a professional or a family caregiver, part of our job, I know we wear a lot of hats, but part of our job is making sure that we can at least increase or maintain that self-esteem for them. And also, and I did touch on depression, but it can also, a good therapy, creative therapy, can minimize behavioral challenges. Again, they get bored, and they can't always convey that to you, that I'm bored. And so they get into different things. You know, you might get a lot of anger exhibited, or agitation, or even anxiety. So, you know, just keep that in mind when you're implementing or you're thinking about activities for your loved one. And also, it benefits the caregiver. I can't tell you how often I hear caregivers tell me that they're worried that their loved one isn't engaged enough, that all they do is sit in front of the TV. I can't get them to do anything. I can't get her to do anything. And so, you know, a great therapy or great activity can alleviate that worry for a caregiver and for the person that's affected with the disease. And lastly, a good activity, good therapy can also reduce falls and dependency as well. And so I'm going to go into a little more detail about the different activities that we implement at Charlie's Place. But before I do that, let me just talk a little bit about implementing a good creative therapy, one that's person-centered, one that implements or focuses on person-centered care. And what we do for people that are clients that before they get enrolled into Charlie's Place, they fill out an application, and in that application, I think one of the last pages, we want to find out more about that person, and so we'll have the caregiver, and ideally we'll have the person that's affected, you know, fill out the application, that part, and tell us about, you know, where they were from, who their parents were, who they were married to, how many children they have, how many grandchildren they have, you know, what were their professions, what did they enjoy to do, what were their hobbies, do they have any pets? And so we use that information in their care plan. And so it helps us create activities that will be meaningful to them while they're at Charlie's Place. And so you want to focus on activities that that promotes that person's skills and abilities. And when I tell caregivers, you know, they may not be able to do the hobby that they used to do, whether it's golf or whatever. You know, you can modify that activity to where they can perform at that level. And so you change it up, you know, be creative about it. You can also focus on what the individual enjoys doing. And I mentioned golf, but what if it's artwork? Or what if it's music? You know, how can you incorporate that into their care? And then focus on them enjoying it and not the achievement of it. And I'm gonna give you another story. You know, we had an entertainment at Charlie's Place, and they were doing what's called a line dance. And so they have music playing, and everybody's doing the same dance, right? And so nobody was doing the same dance during this time. They were pretty much all doing their own thing. And that was fine. That's great. They were enjoying it. They were laughing, you know, they were talking among each other, you know, and it was just a good time. And so focus on that and not so much, you know, are they doing it correctly? And also you can always use past work-life experiences. And we do that at Charlie's Place too. I've had caregivers tell me, well, you know what, my loved one didn't have any hobbies, really. They went to work and they came home. Okay, so when you know, why don't you find something that they did in the past in their work life and implement that if that's something that they enjoy doing? And then you want to look for favorites. So you have to be, you know, I know you have a lot of hats to wear, but you have to be also observant about what things that they like to do. Is it music? Is it, you know, a card game or a puzzle? And implement that into their day. And also be aware of physical limitations. That's pretty obvious. And you want to encourage that type of the therapy in their daily lives. And adjust the activities that person's individual needs. Again, you might have to modify that activity, but that doesn't mean you have to scratch it out altogether. And also you want to pay attention to the time of day for activities. So you don't want to start an activity in the evening time and, you know, in a couple of hours you're going to have to get ready for bed, right? So you may want to look at something early in the morning or even a midday for activities. And so here we go. We're going to talk, I'm going to talk briefly about therapies because I don't want to run out of time. Music. Music works wonders. How does music make you feel? You know, when you're listening to your favorite song, whatever genre of music that is, don't you feel good when you listen to it? They do too. They can enjoy that. And so you want to consider incorporating music into their daily care. And as you can see in this picture here, again, this is Charlie's Place, and we have a young lady that's playing the guitar. And it's actually a sing-along that they're doing. And so you can pull from music from their generation, whether it is big bands or jazz or Motown, and play it for them. At Charlie's Place, we incorporate music in memory, which was created by Dan Cohen. And so it's a program where that individual that's affected with Alzheimer's, they have their own playlist of music. And so if they get agitated or if they just need something to do, we can play music for them, and it'll go through that whole playlist of it. And you'd be surprised how that works with an individual that has Alzheimer's. And you know what? It promotes discussion. It can promote self-esteem, increase self-esteem. And you know what? It can also bring back some old memories because it can jog their memory. You know, oh, what was I doing when that song was playing? You know, when that song first came out. And so music really works wonders for individuals with Alzheimer's. And socializing, again, they want to be social too. And so this is actually a luau that we had at the office for the caregiver and for their loved ones. That way they can get out and they can experience something different, something new. And it doesn't have to be entailed, you know, or very expensive. It could be maybe a trip to a museum or ride. Something, you know, with, I'm trying to think of an activity. It could also be maybe a small get-together with family and friends at a restaurant. But that way they can still be social, you know. I will tell you that I hear a lot of caregivers say that, you know, at one time they were really social, but they're not social anymore. Sometimes they just need that encouragement to be social again. And so just don't give up on it. You know, I'm not saying force them to, but, you know, present opportunities where they can be with other people. And then you want to, for those other people, educate them on a disease so they know how to, you know, respond if it's, you know, maybe an odd behavior or challenges with communication. And this is another option that we use at Charlie's Place for therapy. And we talk a lot at Charlie's Place. We don't always dance and sing and everything, but we have a lot of great discussions. And so you can discuss a picture, a photograph, an event that happened in the past, and ask them questions about that and see if they remember, you know, what do you remember from that? What does that remind you of? And what that does is promote a discussion and also socialization and engagement. And I think I have a picture there, right? That's a picture of Clementine Hunter, who was a former slave. And later in life, she became an artist. And so she has her artwork in quite a few museums. And so you can ask your loved one, and again, it's just an example. You can ask them, you know, well, what do you see there? What does that remind you of? You know, and you'll be surprised what they'll come up with. Well, you know what? Yeah, that looked like my church. Or you know what? I remember getting baptized, and I think the ladies were dressed like that. So, you know, again, you're promoting discussion, you're promoting conversation with them. And art as therapy. You know, in that picture, we have an artist in residence at Charlie's Place, and so she'll come in and she'll do artwork with them and help them out. And it doesn't have to be Rembrandt style, okay? You do the best that you can do, but it's a way for them to express themselves. It's also a way for them to decrease, you know, in anxiety and depression. And you know what's coming back, and they even have adult coloring. I have one at my house, actually, an adult coloring book. And you'll be surprised just how relaxing and soothing that could be. I do it, and so we have our clients do that as well. And, you know, we don't expect them to color in the lines like we had to in kindergarten and first grade. But, you know, do what you can. But, again, that's self-expression. That's giving them something to do. And then we employ pet therapy as well, which is, let me say this now. You know, Alzheimer's is not a one-size-fits-all. So the therapies that I'm sharing with you, they may not work for everybody. So these are just ideas. And I'm saying that because pets don't work for everybody. Everybody doesn't like pets. So for the ones that do, you know, pet therapy really works wonders as well. And it can be very soothing to them, especially if they enjoy animals and love animals. And if you decide to incorporate pet therapy, you do want to make sure that that animal has been trained to be around other people, right? You don't want any incidences. And so what we also do at Charlie's Place for our clients that enjoy gardening, we let them help out with the garden, whether it's watering the plants or even helping cleaning out the pots. They've even helped us grow vegetables and different flowers. And so again, these are just ideas for you to use. You try them out. And again, you can modify these therapies to suit your person's or your loved one's abilities. All right. And so right now, I guess to the left, you have a lady that's playing golf. I don't know if she's a big fan of golf, but she's trying it. But you know, it's fun to do. It's something different. It's a different experience for them. And as you can see on the right, we have a gentleman that's bowling. And isn't that neat? You know, something that he may not have, experienced before. You don't know. He may have enjoyed it. But again, that's thinking outside the box when it comes to activities. And lastly, what I want to share with you is a technology that we have at Charlie's Place. It's called the It's Never Too Late program. And it's a computer-based program with over 3,000 applications. And we use that daily at Charlie's Place. And so we can have our clients do karaoke, which is hilarious to watch. They can play puzzles. They can do play The Price is Right, other games. It also has spiritual related programs. And so there are different denominations. Baptists, there's a Bible study for Baptists, for Catholics or Presbyterian. They can also Skype. They can also email relatives, and they can also oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I'm having a mind slip right now. They can, they'll come back to me. But it's a wonderful, wonderful system. I don't think it's home-based, so it's really for facilities, but it's a great opportunity for our clients to, again, have different experiences. We also have not only the screens, the larger screens, but they also have like the pads, the handheld pads, so they can do different games and different activities on the pads. And actually, I'm gonna tell you a story. This lady that's in the picture here, when I first started, she was a client and she cried a lot. Her son died. Now she couldn't remember that he passed away, but she knew something terrible happened to him, and so she would constantly ask the staff members, well, where's my son? What happened to him? And then she'll start crying, and this was all day, and she did that at home as well. And so when it was a period when she would start crying, what we would do, we would redirect her to the puzzle or a game on the IN2L. And when I tell you, it stopped it, because she was focused on doing the puzzle. And she enjoyed the puzzles. And so that was our way to, again, to redirect her and, to stop her from mourning her son. And so I think that's all. I think I talked a lot. I feel like I did just now. So I'm going to hand it over to Josie.
Yes, we're around the clock. One of the things that you didn't mention, and we were unable to bring it with us out here for this particular tour stop, is that Charlie's Place, but the AFA has an initiative called the AFA Quilt to Remember, where people, organizations, and families across the globe basically are sending us, are putting together quilts that are in memory of or in honor of their loved ones. And the folks at Charlie's Place put together a stunning, and again, apologies, we couldn't bring it this time around, but a stunning quilt. And that was a whole Charlie's Place activity that you guys did.
It sure was, and we had pictures and memorials of our clients in the quilt, and so it was a wonderful activity, and it's traveling now, and it's just a great memorial.
Yeah. And so when you all get your thank you emails from me tonight, I promise I'll include a picture of Charlie's Place and the quilt. Before we turn it over to Jackie, we want to show you another video. Get the lights. Yep.
One of my favorite things to do growing up was to sing to my great-grandma Dee Dee. And when I would visit her in her care home, I began to realize that the singing wasn't just entertainment to her and her friends there, but that through the music she found peace. Sing for Your Seniors is a nonprofit organization that benefits from the generosity of the theatrical community to bring live musical performances to senior living centers, day centers, and hospitals in and around the New York City area. I can't tell you how many times a performer has said to me after a session, "This is why I started singing in the first place." It's a chance to connect through the music and find a forgotten part of themselves. One of the most breathtaking experiences I've had at Sing for Your Seniors was when a woman in hospice care said to me, "Thank you. You move us to living."
It's rare in our lives as actors that we get to sing just for the joy.
To see the smiles and the laughter through the performance is just amazing.
One of the men today was so moved, and he said later that it just brings back so many memories.
The therapeutic value that Jackie and her singers brings here is just something that we are just so very grateful for.
Take it away, Jen.
Hi. I'm Jackie Vanderbeck. I'm a theater artist, activist, and I'm the founder and producing artistic director of Sing for Your Seniors, with a haircut and video. Our mission with Sing for Your Seniors is to build intergenerational connections between professional artists and elder communities through interactive musical performances. We're in our 13th year in New York City, and we have a partner in Denver, so we are trying to expand nationally. Our programs that we have are our Sing for Your Seniors sessions. We also have the Broadway sessions, where we bring in casts from Broadway shows to perform from those shows in the facilities that we serve. We also have the Piano Placement Project, where we take donated pianos and bring them into senior centers that don't have any pianos, or the pianos are dilapidated and need to be replaced. And we have Broadway for the Blind, which we provide with a partnership with the Enchanted Hills Camp for the Blind in California, where we provide these types of performances for the seniors at their camp there, with some more descriptive dialogue describing what's happening. So a little bit about what our sessions are like. They're an hour-long session. We have 10 residencies right now in New York, serving many different types of senior centers, hospitals, nursing homes, and dementia care facilities. So our sessions are really designed to adapt to the audience. And we really take that into consideration. Speaking specifically for our dementia units, we perform at the Teal Room with AFA and at AFA's Education and Resource Room. But one more advanced dementia facility that we serve is the Actors Home, the Actors Fund Home in New Jersey. And our sessions there are shorter. We do 30-minute sessions there because we don't want to overstimulate. That's something that we're very sensitive to. We don't use amplification in our dementia units because we want the sound to be coming from the source and not from a speaker from behind them to cause sort of confusion about where is that coming from. We also form a circle with the audience. That way the artist has eyes on everyone and can see if there's anybody that's in distress. So then we know how to sort of adapt our performance to that, to their experience. Another example would be oftentimes they're in wheelchairs, and sometimes you'll see somebody who is sort of downtrodden, their eyes are down here, and so that might mean that as an artist, and I'm performing and I'm singing, I'm going to come down to their level so that I can meet their eyes and make contact. And then sometimes I'll see if they're going to follow me up during the song. So it's all connection through the music. And I might extend my hand first and see if they are going to extend their hand back. I don't want to touch unless I have consent. I want them to feel in control of their bodies, because oftentimes they might not be in charge of their bodies as much anymore, right? You know, we're being poked and prodded, and we're being wheeled around, and we don't have control over those things. But in this environment, I want them to give them that control as much as possible. So those are a few adaptations that we do in the dementia unit that are more advanced. But some of the things that Christy was saying too really resonate with our program is that it's also a place for people to have experiences with each other through the music. So it's not just about my connection that I'm using through the music, but they're having a communal experience with other people that are in their program, or their loved one, or their caregiver. And a facility that's really predominant is when we perform at the Calvary Cancer Hospital, which is a hospice hospital. And sometimes I have artists that come in and say, ooh, I don't know if I should sing this song, it's kind of sad. And I say, that's okay. I think it's really beautiful for somebody to be able to have an emotional experience that is outside of maybe what they're experiencing in their reality right now. It's nice to be able to feel something outside of their storyline. And it's something that they can share with oh, remember when that song was, oh, or even if it's just a squeeze of the hand. And when our artists come around, because we do, so in a general Sing for Your Senior session, we do 45 minutes of singing, and then we do 15 minutes of meet and mingle, where we'll come around and we open the conversation with just a thank you for coming to this performance today, and then we can kind of gauge what their communicative style is going to be. Sometimes that's language, sometimes it's facial expression, sometimes it's a hand. You know, I think it's important to remember that language isn't always the choice of the communication tool that people use. And I think particularly with my work as a theater artist, that's something that we study. I think that's why it's so beautiful when theater artists are invited into these communities, because we've trained on studying the human condition. We're trained to be open and sensitive to respond and react to our scene partners. So when we come into these environments, and I'm using music as a tool to communicate with you, whatever your response to that is, I'm going to react to it. So I think it's been really beautiful to watch that with artists, particularly theater artists, from the Broadway community come in. Here they are, they're on stage, they're on Broadway, and they're singing in the lights, and the lights are shining in their faces, and they can't really see what's happening to the audience, right? They're telling the story, they're throwing the story out into the audience, and they don't know where it lands. And then they come into a Sing for Your Senior session, and here they are telling the story, and there are people here and having emotional reactions to it, and the artists are just there to take that in, and then afterwards, it starts a conversation. And like I said, sometimes it's my husband and I, that was our first dance, and it just brought me back. Or if it's not verbal communication, sometimes it's even phonating. I've gone to sessions and I'll start singing a song, and I'll hear from the back of the room somebody singing along with me. And so then I go look for this person, and we can have a shared experience together that sometimes isn't verbal. I use Someone to Watch Over. Who knows the song Someone to Watch Over Me? There's a saying old says that love is blind. And I'll be going through and I hear they don't know what the words are, but the music has kicked in. And at Morning Star facility, I had a woman that was happening, and she didn't know her name anymore. And she started to phonate with me the melody of the song. And, I get emotional talking about it. But, so I came and I sat next to her, and we just finished the song together. And afterwards, she just said, my mom, my mom, my mom, my mom. And she just kept saying, my mom. And I later found out that her mother was a piano player. And her mom used to play this song. And so, I say, we have residencies in these facilities because the purpose is to build relationships. And I know that we are making connections. And so every time we return to that facility, I'm singing that song for her. And she lights up, and it's a connection that we have. It's a nonverbal connection through the music. And so, so yeah, that's what Sing for Your Seniors is about. And it's been, I'm just so grateful for AFA for our recent partnership. We've been doing this work for 13 years, and it's just been so wonderful to connect to this community and to continue to grow.
And I will tell you that from our Teal Room activities, there was a gentleman who was actually the bassoon player for the New York Phil, I think, and he came to the Teal Room, and his caregiver had said to us, this is the first time he's been out in months, and he may not come. And so we anxiously awaited his arrival off of that elevator, and the elevator door would open and we'd be like, nope, that's not Phil. But come on in. He loved it. And you're gonna have to fill in the names, but we had 4 of the Sing for Your Seniors singers there, and they just embraced him. And by the end, when his caregiver wanted to, she was like, okay, Phil, it's time to go home. He was like, no, I'm going with her. And so he's been back for other Teal Room activities looking for our Sing for Your
That's probably
Seniors.
Julia, I imagine.
Yes,
Julia
yes.
is our session leader that was at the, yeah.
But it's amazing, as I said earlier, to see people when they come in at first and they've got that sort of, why am I here? And what happens in that 45 minutes is transformative. So that's why we always say, if you can, in this particular program in New York is for free. We are going to be in Denver next year, so guess who's doing the Teal Room in Denver?
Sounds good to me.
Questions for what?
Will you come to New Orleans?
Absolutely. Christy.
Can you come to Charlotte's Place?
Well, I heard I just heard somebody yell out schools for theater, and that's actually, yes, that's actually, so in our strategic planning at Sing for Your Seniors, our goal for growth has to do with conservatory programs and theater companies. So, you know, in New York, obviously, I have all the arts volunteers. I can just, it's so fun and so great. I have so many. But I'm like, how would we function elsewhere? And I went to the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music and, you know, studied intensely. But I think what would have been incredibly impactful and what I would like to do is to create a program that teaches young artists how to use these skills in cultural environments in our communities directly. And like I said, with the actors who are on Broadway, the aspiring actors in New York, every time they come in there, they're just like, oh, this is why I wanted to do this. This is why. And so I think that it would be such an amazing impact on our culture to teach young artists at an early age that, hey, it's not all just about, I want to be a star. It's, oh, look at these skills that I have. There's a whole community out there that my skill set is perfectly designed for connecting with. And so I would love for that to be our avenue is through the conservatories. And hope to create a program to be able to implement that.
Questions for Christy or Jackie?
Thank you. I'm a music education teacher, and a lot of times here in New Orleans, I can't speak for other places, if you are not a music therapy major, then we don't get those opportunities unless people, like I myself, I make it a point to take my kids out to sing in nursing homes at times other than just Christmas. So is this kind of program directed toward a therapy major or just a music person in general? Because we need to get that word out to our universities that, you know, you don't necessarily have to major in music therapy, which is almost like a medical degree. And a lot of us are in performance.
I couldn't agree more with that, and I will preface it by saying that I am not a music therapist. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad for me. But I absolutely couldn't agree more, and I think that there are plenty of benefits that artists have at their disposal that you don't necessarily need a degree in a specific use for that therapy. There are very specific uses for those therapies and the education that goes along with having that degree that is useful in research and useful even in these facilities. But for what we do, which is more emotional-based work, I would say, more connective emotional-based work, I'm not there to research, you know, from the time that we first started to a year from now, how cognitively, you know, you have progressed or digressed based on the songs that I'm singing. I'm not there for any of those. I'm there to be your friend. I'm there to just connect with you, and it doesn't go beyond that. But I agree that I think that that there's plenty of value in just taking the work into where it's needed, even outside of the therapy title.
Yeah, you were mentioning supporting this idea that you have. Could it be a guild, you know, brought into on a national level, where it becomes a vision of people who are singers and performers to have that be part of their work? Perhaps some kind of a guild?
Oh, a guild?
Whatever you would call it. You're more able to name what it would be. But I'm just thinking, you're doing it in the New York area, have it spread throughout the country somehow.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely thinking about that and thinking about different ways to gain support for that. Some of that is, you know, looking for project grants and things of that nature to get started and get going. I've thought about like tour type situations, but I also think that it's there is something about having a residency in a place where you get to know that specific community. Even within New York, in all the different boroughs and neighborhoods, there's so many different demographics and dynamics at different economic levels and people, immigrants from different areas, and different cognitive levels that inform the way that we adapt our programming. So, you know, we're still investigating the best way of going about that.
So, and I'm not suggesting necessarily that your group do it, but to have others model from your experience in their communities, so they do get to know the people they're working with. But that you have something that you've discovered that's really wonderful, and apparently we have a growing population and growing population of elders, so the need's going to increase. So just to have the seed that you've already started to grow into a beautiful tree spread throughout much of the United States and maybe the world.
From your mouth. But I think that there are programs, even like Christy was saying, that they have people that come in. You know, whenever I've had people contact us about volunteering who've been in other states, my response to them is always, you know, right now we're not in Minnesota, but I encourage you personally to do what I did 13 years ago, which was just to email a bunch of different facilities in my area and say, hey, can I come down and I'm a singer, I'm gonna play the piano and sing for some people, would that be okay with you? And I guarantee it, they're gonna be like, please. And so I'm always encouraging people to do that, and there are several facilities that have those types of programs in place and are just, would be happy to welcome artists and to do it. But as far as having like a set sort of, hey, this is how we do it program, I think that's a great idea to already kind of have some, like a kit designed for somebody to be able to incorporate.
Any other questions? Please give these two amazing ladies a round of applause.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So that pretty much wraps up the conference. In your packets, be careful there. In your packets, you'll see that there are evaluations in there. I read through those.